Welcome to another segment of Frankly Franklin. This is Henry Stone, and I have been looking forward to this interview for several weeks now. I have two very special people with me today. One is former Simpson County Sheriff Jewell Groves, and the other, I guess we could say, his baby boy, Gene Groves, someone that everyone who's been connected with the school system certainly remembers. First, I want to tell you just a little bit about Sheriff Groves. I'm not going to call him Mr. Groves on this program. I'm going to refer to him as Sheriff because in the years 1974, I believe, to 1978, he was Sheriff of Simpson County. Now, Mr. Groves is 97 years old. He has been involved in farming all of his life, the oldest living ex-sheriff in the state of Kentucky. He's operated a grocery store. He is in good health. He has worked in the tobacco field this past year. He is still baling some leftover tobacco this week, and he just told me that yesterday he helped a neighbor get his garden out. So quite a remarkable person. And Sheriff, we're really glad to have you on this program. We're really glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
Tell me how you feel these days.
How do I feel?
Yes, sir.
Feel great, great.
And what do you do most every day? Kind of tell me what the routine is for you from when you get up in the morning until you go to bed at night.
Well, I get up every morning around 5:30 or 6 o'clock. I do things. I do something every day. I work a little every day.
And it doesn't bother you?
Yeah, it don't bother me. No, it don't bother me one bit.
And I'm told that you started driving a vehicle when you were 13 years old, so that means that you have been driving for 84 years.
That's right. That's right.
Tell me about the first car that you drove or the first car that you saw.
Well, the first car I owned was 1922. There were three of us went to Louisville and bought three T-model cars. Give $418 a car. Come back here to Franklin, give $5 for the license, and the gasoline then was 15 cents a gallon. And I've been driving ever since. I never have had an accident, but one time when I was a deputy sheriff, I got a call and I run out and jumped in the car and backed out in front of a guy and tore up, I believe it was $130 worth of his bumper, being his bumper. And that's the only, I was run over while I was sheriff 2 or 3 different times, but hit by other people.
Let's talk a little bit, Sheriff, about when you were growing up. You were born in 1905, I believe, in the month of February. What was it like? What do you remember? What's the first thing you remember about your childhood?
Well, the first thing I remember is, of course, my daddy was a farmer, and he raised a little tobacco back in them years. And there wasn't a whole lot of tobacco raised then. There was no market here for tobacco, and we had to haul that tobacco to Danville, Kentucky. And no poison to kill the worms. We had to pick the worms off. I never will forget, my dad would plow fur around the back patch, and he cut a log, and would hitch a mule to that log, and I'd ride that mule when I was 10 years old and drag around in that gully and mash them worms. There were worms coming out of other old growed up fields. They wasn't all ground was poor back then. If you made a 1,000 pound tobacco to the acre, you really done good.
Now, Mr. Groves, Sheriff Groves, I apologize. You dealt with raising a lot of mules back in the old days. Tell us about how you raised mules, how many you raised, how you broke them to use to work on the farm, and also how you broke them to ride.
Well, now my daddy he kept 4 mules and a mare. And of course I had a brother who was 4 years older than me. And so 1921, he gave us a tobacco patch. And we raised the acre of tobacco and sold it. Claude Granger was selling buggies right down the street up here in town. We bought a buggy off Claude Granger. That was 1921. Well, our daddy wouldn't let us drive that horse much on Sunday. You know, we worked him all the week, and he didn't want us to drive him on Sunday, but my brother would drive him one Sunday, and I'd drive him the next Sunday. And that's the way we got around about. But these mules, he broke a lot of mules. And there was a fellow lived over in next to our lender, raised a lot of mules. And we'd get a team of young mules from him. He'd let us work them 2 years to get them broke good. And so we'd break them for him and then turn them back to him 2 years later.
Gene, I want to talk to you just a minute. Most of you will remember Gene Groves. He retired a few years ago from the Simpson County school system, and Gene was the director and head of maintenance at the bus garage here, and he kept all those school buses running. Gene, what can you tell us? Tell us a good story about your dad's farming career.
Well, the only thing I can say, Henry, he was a hard worker, and he intended, because I have a brother older than I am, and he intended for us to work and work hard. He taught us to be honest and fair, and I was real proud of that, you know. But for us to get in trouble, which we never was in a whole lot of trouble, the way we was raised, we was in the field with him from sun up to sundown, from Monday till Saturday night. You didn't have much time to get in there. But he's been a blessing to us, you know. How many? 3 kids, 76-year-old, 71-year-old, and myself soon be 67. How many's got a 97-year-old dad still living?
That's true.
Real proud. Something to be thankful for, too.
Certainly. Mr. Groves, you've been driving for 84 years, and when I was talking to you, you told me that you still take tobacco to Gallatin or Springfield?
Yeah. Yeah, I drive to Gallatin, Springfield, Bowling Green. I don't see a bit of difference in my driving. I can see the road good and air good, and so I don't see no difference in my driving. And
when you go back and look at your law enforcement career, you were a constable in the South District of Simpson County for 12 years, then served as deputy for 4 years when John Belcher was the sheriff.
right.
Then you served as sheriff. You were elected for 4 years. Tell us a little bit about maybe some stories about your law enforcement career. I know for sure, because I used to cover news back in those days, that if Sheriff Groves went to get someone, he brought them back.
Well, Joe Moss James got elected as the sheriff in the 60s. I run for constable. What started this, there was a little roadside park right down from my store on 31W, and they got to doing a lot of meanness down there. Well, people would come along and stop there to see what was going on and come on down there to my store. Tell me, I said, well, I can't do a thing in the world about it. Now, that is in the 60s. Well, there's a lot of people here in town and out the county asked me to run for constable. Well, Joe Moss come out for sheriff, and I did for constable. I got elected the year he got elected sheriff. I worked with him quite a bit. Well, Bud Laney was the sheriff at that time, and he'd got out, and he is a jailer. Well, then Joe Moss stayed 4 years, and Bud Laney come back, and I got elected again for constable. And well, I didn't work a whole lot with Bud Laney, but about 6, 8 months before he passed away, he sent word. Claypool Cardwell was his deputy. Come out there, see if I'd work for him. He wasn't able, you know. And so I worked for him. Then John Belcher run, and he got elected. And I run again, got elected 3 times for constable. Well, one evening, I had a red light on my car, and I was working a lot. I had a lot of friends in Tennessee, and they'd come up here and tell me, we picked up 2 guys up here that broke out of the penitentiary down there in Nashville. They come and told me. I wouldn't go out there as constable. I come to John Belcher, told him about it. We picked them up and got them back down there. Well, I took my car in down that Massey to get the oil changed in it. Had a red light on it. So Bobby told me, he's the fire chief, said, I need that red light. And I said, you do? Yeah. I said, well, y'all was 3 or 4 hours putting it on there. He said, oh, I can change it in 5 minutes now. I said, okay, go ahead. He changed the globe. Then about a week later, John Belcher called me. I was constable then. And he said, there's a fender bender down about the state line. Would you run down there and check it out? Said, I got to be in Bowling Green the next 30 minutes. I said, yeah. Well, I went down there, and that's just a little old fender bender. Both of them live in Simpson County. One of them said, I'm the cause of it. I'll pay for it. Don't turn it in to the insurance company. I said, okay. Well, about that time, Albert Bridges, he is a trooper. He drove up. And he said, you got everything worked out? Yeah, everything's okay. Well, I drove back. I was in the store then, running the store. And a few minutes later, he drove under my porch. I went to the door. He said, you can't have that red light, that green light, blue light. I can't. No, he said, you just constable. And I said, well, I didn't know that. And so I said, well, okay. He drove on off. A day or 2 later, I was up here at the courthouse, went in, sheriff's office, telling John Belcher about it. He said, come on, go with me. We went up there before Joe Moss James. He swore me in as a deputy. Said, see if he stops you now about that. And that's when I come a deputy. Then, of course, Claypool was going to run for sheriff that year. John had to get out. 4 years, you know. And, well, there was several. Claypool couldn't win it. Said he couldn't, well, you know, he'd had a little heart trouble. And they put me to run. And I said, I'm pretty old to be running for sheriff.
How old were you?
Well, I was 69. And they said, well, you can make it. And I said, well, okay. And so there was 10 of us run that year. And I said all the time that whoever got 1,000 votes would be the sheriff, 10 running. And I got 990 something. And so I got elected then for sheriff.
And you served for 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Gene, I know your dad is kind of a modest person, but can you tell us a couple of stories about when he was sheriff?
I'll have to relate to James Mooneyhan. James Mooneyhan served as one of his deputies there for a while. They got a call from Keystop down here, and a Greyhound bus had come up, and evidently when they loaded in Nashville, this gentleman was kind of drugged up a little bit, And the passengers got scared. It excited them. When they got up at Keystop, they pulled off and called Daddy. He was sheriff, and called him, and James said he looked over to Debbie, let's go. We got a call down to Keystop. They've got a guy on the bus kind of getting unruly. So they went down there, and James had the passengers off. The driver walked with them up on the bus. Said Daddy walked back there to him, and looked at him. And Daddy's words then was, oh, buddy, you got to go with me, Looked at him and said, oh, buddy, said, you got to go with me. Said, you scared some people, and we got to get you off from here. That guy looked up at him, kind of drugged up, and said, now, Sheriff, I ain't going with nobody. James said, Daddy looked at him and said, you ain't been shot today, have you? So that guy got up and come on out of the bus, and they put the handcuffs on him and brought him in, and that. But
Mr. Groves, or Sheriff, I keep saying Mr. Groves, I called you that a lot of years. Did you ever fail to bring anyone in that you went after?
Never did. I got a call one Sunday. I'll tell you a little something on him.
Oh.
I got a call one Sunday evening that I believe it was a 49 highway. There was a strange car running back and forwards, and said it's a sport model car, got a woman, man in it. Well, I went out there. All the ones I knew out there were George Hall. He is overseer over the county roads. And right at his house, the road made a turn. And I made that turn. His house is a little ways off of the road. Looked up there, and I saw that car up there. And I stopped right quick and backed back and run up there. Before I got there, a man was coming out of the house with a television had in his arm, and this woman is still sitting out there in the car. Well, when he seen me, there was about 30-acre cornfield out by the house, tossling. He threw the television down and broke out in that cornfield. And, of course, I wasn't going to let that woman get in that car, and I went to her first and got the keys out of the car and picked her up and brought her into town. She told me who he was and everything, And I put her in jail and went back out there and got the car. I told her, I said, I'll be down here in the morning and talk to you. They had California license on this car. Well, she had told me that had been up in Indiana, hunting a job. There's out of California. She told me who he was. Well, next morning when I come to the courthouse, just while I was unlocking the door, the telephone was ringing. And I answered it, and it was from out there, and said, we seen a man cross the road and go in that cornfield. Well, I figured it was him, Well, none of my deputies, John Belcher hadn't got there. He is a county detective. And I went down by Gene Howard's station. He was running the station, and I said, would you run with me out there? I seen a man across the road and go in that cornfield. No, I ain't going out there. let him shoot at me. And I said, well, okay. Well, I drove on out there, and never will forget, little boy standing outside in the road. He said, Sheriff, he said, I seen that man cross the road and go in that cornfield. And I said, you did? Yeah. And I said, okay. He said, you want me to go with you out there in the cornfield? I said, no, young man, don't you go with me out there. You might get hurt.
Did you bring him in?
No, I never found him. It wasn't him.
You know what his name was? Joe Palmer. I never did know. They called him Silver Tongue. Joe Palmer and the cities and the deputies always told me you'd give him 15 minutes with a person.
Yeah.
When you had to go, give him 15 minutes. He'd have him talk down, have him in the car, not even handcuffed. Put him in the car. You could talk him down 15 minutes and didn't have to put up a scuffle or nothing.
And Gene, let's talk about, I believe it was in the year 2000 that your father, Sheriff Groves, was honored at the Kentucky Sheriff's Convention for being the oldest living sheriff,
Yes.
ex-sheriff in the state of Kentucky. And I hear that your dad put on kind of a performance for the people there on the dance floor. Tell me about that.
Well, him and Joe's wife, Sheriff Palmer, they got out there and kind of cut the rug a little bit, you know. And it amazed people up there. They didn't realize, well, he almost got a standing ovation for us, you know. And I can't do that in.
Oh, they give us a big hand when we done that, you know. Me, 90-some years old, and there was a big hand out there at that.
And you tell me that you still play Rook 2 or 3
Yeah,
years?
we play Rook once, twice a week at night over at Portland. We go over there, and me and Gene Howard's wife, Mary, and play a little Rook over there. Yeah. But I'll tell you about another guy we had down on the floor. Every time we'd go to get him, we had to overpower him. I won't call no name. He's got some folks still living. And he stayed down in the basement playing. He was 19 years old, well, about 160 pounds. He was stout as a mule. And every time we went after him, his mind wasn't too good, you know, and they wanted to take him to Hopkinsville. So we had him down there, me and John Belcher. He was bad to kick. And I was holding him across his breast. John was trying to get the cuts on his legs. And he bit me on that arm. And man, that hurt like everything, you know. And I had on a coat pretty thick. And I took my blackjack out. He had one hand hold of an iron post down there and one turned to loose. I hit that hand. I might not cut them fingers off. I mean, he turned it loose then. Well, brought him on up to town and had to go in the judge's office and get the paper. We was going to Hopkinsville with it. Well, John was driving, and I was up in the front seat. He just got one like curve turned in there. He kicked that front seat out that I was in, kicked my head over again the dash. John stopped right quick. And had his feet handcuffed. Well, we went and raised the trunk up on the car, and he happened to have a rope in there. I called it a plow line, what we let you. Man, we tied him down on the floorboard back there. Got down about Russellville. I said, oh, buddy, I said, you think you untie you can do all right, be all right? He said, no, I want it the hard way. I said, well, you're getting it the hard way. Well, we came on down there and put him in there. Of course, his folks, I knew his mother I know her from the time she was 7, 8 years old. And so they'd go down there pretty often to see him, you know. And they went down there one Sunday to see him, and they told him they was going to set the backer the next day. He said, well, if you'll carry me home, well, yeah, I'll help y'all set the backer. Well, of course they did. They brought him home. Well, the next morning they got up there setting the backer. He had an oil well on his farm, and he said the tank was about half full of oil. So dinner come, back past with this oil well. And said, well, we'll go to dinner. He said, no, y'all go on dinner. And he said, what he was doing was following the setter where they missed the plant, he put one in. When they got back up by after dinner, he'd turned that oil on, it run all over the backpack.
Sheriff, if a young person came to you today, said, Sheriff Groves, you're 97 years old, you're still active, you've had a great life, what advice could you give me on how to live to have a good life like you've had?
Well, I don't know. I think what I've done, I believe you got to stir around a lot and do something. Now, I can sit around a little bit and my legs will get just a little bit stiff, and the more I work around, the better I get. Now, I'm going to tell you, I had a cousin. He lived to be 106 years old.
Wow.
And he quit work when he was 60 years old. I cultivated this farm then. And I've always heard that more you could do, a little longer you'd live. Now, back when I was growing up, old people's the one that died. Now, there were several, well, we called it consumption back then. And they call it now TB. And there were several people that died with that TB. The year I was born, I was told, 1905, we lived 8 miles from Portland in Robertson County. And then we'll get what Dr. Peden, he come out there to see me. They said it was about 8 o'clock in the night. He rode a horse out there and charged $6 for coming out there. Well, my oldest sister, she married in 1917, George Weisinger, right here at the state line, right over in Kentucky. And I would come up there and visit them quite a bit. And at that time, Joe had a lawyer here in town, Clark. Joe P. Clark's daddy was carrying the mail around on that route that we lived on a horse. Yeah. I forget his name, but he was riding a horse and bringing the mail around on that horse. And that was 1918, 17.
Well, Sheriff, our time is just about run out on us. I want to thank you for taking the time.
I appreciate you having me here.
You were awfully nice to me back in the days when you were sheriff and I was covering news.
Thank you for that.
And Gene, thank you for coming with your dad.
Okay.
And I hope he continues to keep you in line.
He'd go out and live us all.
I want to promise.
Yeah, I got a man's garden to work up this evening when I get back home. He wants to plant it.
When you turn 100, I want you to give me your word that you'll come back and be on this program again.
Well, I certainly will. I just hope I can live to be 100. My daddy lived to be 101. He had a sister that lived to be 105. And this cousin I was telling you about, he lived to be 106. He ain't been dead long. Another thing, my daddy kept telling me when I was growing up, if my daddy was living now, he'd be 130 years old. And he said when he was 15 years old, they growed turkeys. A whole bunch of neighbors growed a bunch of turkeys. They drove them to Nashville to the market. Said they'd gone 5 days. Said when night come, them old, back then there's rail fences and paling fences. And then first time I was ever in Nashville was 1918. I carried a bunch of mules down there. Rode them down there to Nashville. I was 13 years old. I come up this highway, I don't know at the times, with mules up here town on third Mondays. Yeah, watering trough right out there on the square back then.
Well, both of you, again, thank you for coming. This has been a very...
They got some pictures they want to show, I think.
Oh, you have some pictures you'd like to show, Gene?
Okay, this is, I can see it here. That's probably hard to see. This is his election card when he's running for sheriff. This is, and this was in May of 29, 1973. That's when he's running for sheriff. Here's some of his deputies, and of course Elizabeth Atwood is still living. She retired from there.
Well, Danny Brewer.
Danny Brewer, still, you know, he's working. Here's something we're proud of, the Groves kids and family. This is Mother and Daddy's 65th wedding anniversary. Made at our church. We attend First Baptist Church in Mitchellville. We've been there since 1951. And you know, we talk about some drugs and things. Right here, this is a whiskey still. Then also, because this is dead in the middle, the sheriff, and this is marijuana over here. This is some drugs, and they're burning it in a wheelbarrow. And as I was talking a while ago, Henry, asking the question, you know, our teenagers now, I guess drugs is a problem. I know it's a problem. Well, you know, Mom and Daddy had us family on drugs. They drug us to church Sunday morning. They drug us to church Sunday night. They drug us to church Wednesday night. So, but anyway, but this is some things that we're proud of. And also this right here, 210-page book on the Groves family tree. It started in 1972. A guy grows out of James Groves out of California started this, and we're very proud of this too.
That marijuana there, I want to tell you about that. I was out of the office one day, and when I come in, Elizabeth said, you had a good friend come in here a while ago. Said, I don't know his name. Said he told me he lived in Gallatin, Tennessee. But he said he is your friend. And he is out going to old houses, picking up bottles and fruit jars. And said he found marijuana in one of the old houses, and he said, I come by here to tell the sheriff. Said, he's my friend. Well, we went out there, and there was $4,000 worth of it there in that house. We stayed out there 4 days and nights, and nobody never did come to get it. So we brought it in on Monday morning, and was burning it out there in the courthouse yard. And there, I don't know, 50 or 75 people gathered around there. And I seen them leaving, you know, and they said it was making them drunk. It never did bother me smelling that smoke one bit, but they said they was getting drunk on it. Wow. And that's how come us with all that marijuana. Yeah.
Just want to ask you one real quick question since we have a little extra time. Who was president when you were born?
Roosevelt.
In all the years and all the presidents that you've
Yeah, I
seen over the
think...
years, who's the best?
Well, the best one was Franklin D. Roosevelt, and the ones that went out 4 years ago. I'm a Democrat, never did vote no other way but a Democrat ticket, and there's 8 in our family, and every one of us, my daddy was a Democrat. We always voted the Democrat ticket and still vote the Democrat ticket. I do.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
very much, both of you.
Yeah.
You've been watching Frankly Franklin, and it's been an honor to me to have as our guest Sheriff Jewell Groves, the oldest living sheriff in the state of Kentucky, 97 years old. When he leaves here, he's going to help a neighbor in the garden, still works every day. His youngest son, Gene, you all remember as the head of maintenance at the bus garage here. We really appreciate and thank you for viewing.